Grant had surgery on his knee after a stupid rec league soccer injury. Torn ligament, weeks of recovery, no driving, no stairs. When he asked if I could stay with him for a few days, I didn't hesitate. We'd been friends for years, gym buddies, late-night taco runs, mutual bitching about work. I'm Wesley, by the way, 31, single, and very good at pretending I don't fall for men who smile the way Grant does. The plan was simple. I crash on his couch, help him get around, keep him fed, make sure he didn't do anything dumb while hopped up on prescriptions. A week, maybe 10 days. Then life would go back to normal. But from the first night home from the hospital, normal disappeared. Grant was quieter than usual, drained in a way I'd never seen. The guy who usually filled rooms with sarcasm and confidence suddenly needed help standing, needed reminders to take meds, needed someone to sit with him because the pain spiked when everything went quiet. I told myself that's what friends do. You show up. You don't overthink it. You don't have to hover, he said on the second night, a crooked smile on his face as I handed him a glass of water. I know, I replied. I want to. That should have been my warning. By day 4, the couch felt like a formality. Grant was exhausted, frustrated, hurting, and I was already spending half the night in his room anyway, helping him reposition, grabbing ice packs, talking him through the worst waves of pain. At some point, I stopped leaving after he fell asleep. I'd sit in the chair by his bed, scrolling my phone, listening to his breathing even out. You could just stay, he murmured once, eyes closed. In case I need you. Our conversations stretched late into the night, less joking, more confessions, regrets, things neither of us said out loud during daylight. One night, while helping him sit up, he winced and grabbed my wrist harder than he meant to. Sorry, he muttered. I hate needing you like this. The words landed heavier than they should have. You don't, I said. I'm here because I want to be. The pain meds made him honest. Or maybe they just stripped away the excuses. Wes, he said quietly. What happens when I don't need help anymore? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. All I knew was that the distance between us had vanished, and neither of us seemed eager to put it back. And that was before the night everything finally tipped past the point of pretending. The night everything shifted for real didn't feel explosive. Felt inevitable. Grant's pain had been worse that evening. The swelling hadn't gone down, and frustration clung to him thicker than the sweat at his temples. I helped him through his meds, through the slow stretch the physical therapist insisted on, through the anger he tried and failed to joke away. By the time we were both quiet, the apartment felt smaller than usual, like the walls were listening. Stay? He asked again, softer this time. I didn't answer. I just lay down beside him. Morning came too fast. Grant didn't remember everything. Or maybe he remembered enough to be cautious. He was quieter, more guarded. We didn't talk about the kiss. Not directly. But the space between us had changed. Charged. Unavoidable. Every touch after that meant more. Helping him stand. Adjusting pillows. Passing him a glass of water. His eyes lingered too long. Mine did too. The unspoken question hovered between us. Was that a one-time mistake? Or the beginning of something neither of us was ready to name? I was starting to realize the hardest part of helping him heal wasn't watching him struggle. It was knowing that once he didn't need me anymore, I might lose him completely. And the thought of that hurt worse than anything he was recovering from. The next few days were harder than the night itself. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. Grant acted normal. Too normal. He joked again, asked about work, complained about the physical therapist like he always did. If someone had walked into the apartment, they would have seen exactly what they expected. A guy recovering from surgery and his friend helping out. But every time our eyes met, something flickered. Recognition. Restraint. I caught myself adjusting my behavior in small, stupid ways. Standing a little farther away than necessary. Keeping my hands busy so I wouldn't reach for him without thinking. Pretending I didn't notice when his gaze followed me as I moved around the kitchen. One afternoon, while I was chopping vegetables, he broke the silence. You okay? He asked. I glanced over. He was propped up on the couch, knee elevated, watching me like he was trying to read something I wasn't saying out loud. Yeah, I said too quickly. Why? He shrugged. You've been distant. The irony almost made me laugh. I'm just trying not to make things weird, I admitted. Grant exhaled slowly. So we are acknowledging that things are weird. I set the knife down. There was no point pretending anymore. Do you remember what happened? I asked. He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. Enough. That single word carried a lot of weight. Then why aren't we talking about it? I asked. Because, he said carefully, I don't know what it means, and I don't want to say the wrong thing and screw this up. Screw what up? I asked. Our friendship. He looked at me, then really looked at me with something raw in his expression. Whatever this is, he said. I don't want to lose you. The words hit me square in the chest. I crossed the room without thinking, stopping just short of the couch, close enough that I could feel the pull again, that quiet gravity between us. You're not going to, I said. But we can't keep pretending nothing happened. Grant nodded. I know. There was a pause. A long one. I've never, he started, then stopped. He scrubbed a hand over his face, frustrated. I've never felt like this about a guy before. Something in his voice confused, vulnerable, made my chest ache. I have, I said softly. Just, not about you. Until now. He looked surprised by that. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. So what do we do? He asked. I smiled faintly. Right now, you heal. I help. We take it slow. And later, I shrugged. Later we see if this is real without painkillers and recovery haze. Grant laughed quietly. That sounds smart. Yeah, I said. Which probably means we won't follow it perfectly. That earned a real smile from him. The kind I'd missed more than I realized. From then on, things shifted again, but into something steadier. We didn't kiss. We didn't cross any new lines. But we stopped pretending there weren't lines at all. He leaned into my touch instead of flinching away from it. Let his hand rest on mine longer than necessary. Let himself be quiet with me without apologizing for it. One night, as I helped him settle into bed, he caught my wrist gently. Stay? He asked. Not the same way as before. This time it wasn't need. It was choice, and for the first time since his surgery, the ache in my chest felt less like fear and more like hope. Recovery has a rhythm to it. Pain, progress, frustration, repeat. By the second week, Grant was moving better. Not fast, not confidently, but better. He could get to the bathroom without me hovering in the doorway. He could stand long enough to make his own coffee, even if it wiped him out after. Every small improvement felt like a win and a quiet loss at the same time. Because the more he healed, the less he needed me. I hated myself for thinking that. I started finding excuses to stick around. Extra grocery runs. Overcomplicated meals. Cleaning things that didn't need cleaning. Grant noticed, of course. He always noticed more than he let on. You don't have to stay tonight, he said one afternoon, casual but watchful. I'm good. I nodded. I know. I still didn't leave. We were sitting on the bed, backs against the headboard. The TV was on, muted, forgotten. Grant stared at his knee, flexing it slowly like he was testing not just the joint, but himself. I keep thinking about that night, he said. I didn't pretend to misunderstand. Me too. It felt real, he said. And that scares the hell out of me. Why? He huffed a quiet laugh. Because I don't know where it fits. Into my life. Into how I see myself. I turned to him. You don't have to figure everything out right now. I know, he said. But I also don't want to wake up one day and realize I pretended this didn't matter. That hit close to home. I shifted, facing him fully. Then don't pretend. Grant met my eyes. The vulnerability there was almost unbearable. I like you, he said. Simple. Honest. No qualifiers. My chest tightened. I like you too. Silence stretched between us, not awkward, just heavy with what we were finally allowing ourselves to say. He reached for my hand. Slow, deliberate. Not testing. Choosing. I'm not ready for everything, he said. But I don't want to go back to pretending we're just friends either. I squeezed his fingers. We don't have to label it. We can just be us. Whatever pace works. Grant nodded, relief softening his features. Thank you. From then on, things grew quietly. Morning coffee together. His head resting against my shoulder during movies. Small, steady moments that added up to something that felt real in a way I hadn't expected. But healing has a cruel sense of timing. The day Grant drove himself for the first time, he came back grinning, keys dangling from his fingers like a trophy. I'm officially independent again, he announced. I smiled. You don't have to stay anymore, he said softly. Not pushing me away, just acknowledging reality. I swallowed. Do you want me to go? He shook his head. No. I just want to know you're here because you want to be, not because you feel obligated. I turned toward him. I'm here because I want to be. He smiled, slow and sincere. The strange thing was how normal everything started to feel. Not easy, just normal in that quiet, lived-in way. Like we'd slipped into a routine neither of us had planned. But both of us were careful not to disrupt. Grant started physical therapy twice a week. I drove him at first, then rode along even after he insisted he could handle it himself. I told him I liked the company. That wasn't a lie. The lie would have been pretending I wasn't afraid of what came next. Because the more his life expanded again, the more I wondered where I fit in it. One evening after PT, he was quiet in the passenger seat, jaw clenched the way it got when he was thinking too hard. You okay? I asked. Yeah, he said, then sighed. No, I don't know. I waited. I'd learned by then that pushing never helped. They asked about goals, he finally said. Long term, getting back on the field, trips I put off, stuff I paused because of the surgery. And, I prompted. And I realized, he said slowly, that everything I pictured, you were there. My chest tightened. I don't know what that means, he continued quickly. Or what to do with it. I just noticed. We pulled into his driveway and sat there with the engine running, the air thick with unsaid things. It means you're being honest with yourself, I said. That's not a bad thing. He nodded, staring out the windshield. It's just, I don't want this to be a recovery thing. I don't want to look back and wonder if I only felt this way because I was vulnerable. I turned to him. Do you feel vulnerable right now? He met my eyes. Thought about it. No. Then that's your answer. He smiled at that. Small. Real. Later that night, lying in bed, he rolled onto his side and propped himself up on one elbow. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. Why didn't you make a move before all this? He asked. No accusation. Just curiosity. I laughed quietly. Because you were straight. And because I didn't want to ruin what we had. And now I still don't want to ruin it, I said. But I think pretending nothing's happening would do that faster. Grant nodded. Yeah. Weeks later, I finally moved my things out of the living room. Not because he asked, because it made sense. Because staying over had quietly turned into being there. My toothbrush joined his. My clothes took up a drawer. Then another. One night, as we were brushing our teeth side by side, Grant caught my eye in the mirror and smiled. What? I asked. This, he said. Us. Feels good. Solid. I rinsed my mouth, leaned against the counter. It does. He set his toothbrush down and turned toward me fully. I don't know what label fits yet, he said. But I know I don't want to do this without you. I stepped closer, resting my forehead against his. Same. The pain had faded by then. The meds were long gone. The excuses too. What remained was choice. The first time we were seen together as something, it wasn't planned. Grant had been cleared to walk longer distances, no crutches, just a slight limp when he got tired. We went out for coffee, his idea. Public. Casual. A test neither of us admitted we were taking. The barista smiled at us like we were obvious. What can I get you guys? She asked, already reaching for 2 cups. Guys. Plural. Together. Grant glanced at me, just for half a second. I waited for the flinch. It never came. He ordered like it was nothing. We sat by the window, knees brushing under the small table. You okay? I asked. Yeah, he said. Then, quieter. I like this. So do I. That was when I realized how much I'd been bracing for something to go wrong. A sudden panic. Regret. Him pulling away once the world came back into focus. Instead, he leaned closer. The next hurdle came from a place I should have expected: his friends. A small get-together. Beer, bad music, the same group I'd known for years. Grant hadn't said anything beforehand, just told me to come with him. I didn't ask questions. At first, nothing felt different. Same jokes. Same teasing about his recovery. Then someone made a comment about dating apps, and the room shifted. Grant didn't look at me right away. He took a breath. "I'm seeing someone," he said. A pause. "Yeah." One of the guys asked. "Anyone we know?" Grant turned then, looked at me. Not to ask permission, just to anchor himself. "Yeah," he said. "Wes." The room went quiet for a beat too long. I felt a dozen instincts fire at once. Defend. Retreat. Laugh it off. I did none of them. I just met his gaze and stayed still. Then someone snorted. "About damn time." Another guy laughed. Honestly, that makes so much sense. The tension broke like it had never been real. Later, out on the balcony, Grant exhaled hard, leaning on the railing. "Okay," he said. "That was terrifying." I smiled. "You did good." He looked at me, eyes bright with something like relief. "You know what's weird?" he said. "What?" "I thought losing my independence would be the worst part of surgery," he said. "Turns out it was the thing that forced me to stop lying to myself." I kissed his hair. "Funny how that works." He shifted closer. "You didn't save me, you know." "I know," I said. "But you stayed while I figured myself out," he added. "That matters." It did. And hearing him say it mattered too. We weren't perfect. We still had awkward conversations ahead. Family, labels, the future. But the foundation was there now, built on care, honesty, and the quiet understanding that boundaries hadn't disappeared. They'd evolved into something stronger. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what happened next. The real test didn't come in a dramatic moment. No shouting, no ultimatums, no sudden crisis. Came on an ordinary Tuesday night. Grant was back at work by then, lighter schedule, still careful with his knee, but fully himself again. I'd gone back to my place to grab more clothes, standing in my half-empty bedroom, realizing how strange it felt to be there alone. When I got back, he was on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, smiled, then hesitated. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied, setting my bag down. "What's up?" He patted the cushion beside him. I sat. "I had therapy today," he said. "Physical or dash?" "Other," he interrupted gently. "The talking kind." That got my attention. I told him about us, Grant continued. About how this started. About you. I waited. I'd learned that silence was sometimes the best way to show up. He asked me if I would have let myself feel this if I hadn't been forced to slow down, Grant said. And I hated how long it took me to answer. I felt a flicker of fear. Old instinct. I didn't move. "But here's the thing," he went on. "The answer wasn't no. It was, I don't know." And that scared me. I turned toward him. "Scared you how?" "Because I realized something," he said quietly. "Even now, when I don't need you the way I did before, I still want you here. I still choose this." My chest loosened. "I don't want our story to be the guy who helped me after surgery," he said. "I want it to be the guy I built a life with. If you're still in." I didn't hesitate. "I am," I said. "I've been in. Even when I was pretending not to be." Grant smiled, eyes a little glassy. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. "Good," he murmured, "because I'm done pretending." Months later, his knee barely a thought anymore, we talked about that time like it belonged to another version of us. The pain, the meds, the blurred boundaries that started it all. They hadn't cheapened what we became. They just cracked us open. Sometimes, late at night, Grant would joke, "You know, you totally took advantage of me while I was vulnerable." I'd laugh and kiss his shoulder. "You're welcome." But the truth was simpler than that. I helped him recover from surgery. Somewhere along the way, we stopped pretending we were just helping each other survive and realized we were choosing to stay. And that choice, that was the real healing. A year later, I'm standing in our kitchen watching Grant struggle with a jar he absolutely refuses to admit is stuck. "I've got it," he mutters, twisting harder. You had knee surgery, I remind him. Not an ego transplant. He shoots me a look. I don't hear you volunteering. I take the jar, pop it open effortlessly, and slide it back to him. He stares at it, then at me, then laughs full, easy, unguarded. Unbelievable, he says. I fell in love with a man who opens jars for a living. That and emotional support, I say. I'm multifaceted. This is what it looks like now. No dramatic music. No blurred lines. Just small, solid moments stacked on top of each other until they became a life. Grant's knee healed completely. He plays soccer again, more careful, smarter about it. Sometimes I go watch from the sidelines, coffee in hand, pretending I don't love the way he looks back at me after a good play. Like he's checking that I saw it. I did. I always do. The surgery still comes up occasionally, usually late at night, when the world is quiet and honesty feels easy. Funny how that was the worst time of my life, he once said, tracing idle lines on my arm. And also the reason I stopped running from myself. I kissed his temple. I didn't plan on falling in love with you while you were drugged and grumpy. I wasn't that grumpy, he protested. You asked me if the couch was judging you. He laughed into my shoulder. Okay, maybe a little. We never pretend it started perfectly. We don't romanticize the pain or the confusion. But we also don't regret it. Boundaries didn't vanish, they evolved, reshaped by trust and choice instead of necessity. Sometimes people ask how we met. Grant usually answers first. He helped me after surgery, and then always he adds, and he stayed. That's the part that matters. Not the injury, not the recovery, just the staying.